Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The sun was setting over the city of New Haven, and traffic was buzzing along the busy streets. Among the honking cars and hurried passers-by, a black sedan glided elegantly. Behind the wheel, Vanessa Harper, a black woman in her 30s, remained perfectly calm despite the fatigue of her day. But that evening, she had no idea that an encounter would disrupt her routine. At the red light, a white police officer, Officer Mark Reynolds, known in the neighborhood for his arrogance and impulsive temper, noticed Vanessa's car. As soon as he approached, he narrowed his eyes, judging her unnecessarily. "Do you have a problem?" he growled, his voice betraying his contempt. Vanessa slowly rolled down her window. "Hello, officer. May I ask what's wrong?" Reynolds leaned toward her and, with a condescending smile, replied, "I saw you driving. I think you parked too close to the curb." Vanessa took a deep breath and took out her wallet with a slow, controlled gesture. She flashed her FBI badge. "Officer, my name is Agent Vanessa Harper, FBI. I would ask that you show some respect and let me pass." Reynolds's face tightened. He couldn't accept the authority of a black woman, much less one holding federal office. He stepped forward threateningly. "You think you can tell me what to do?" At that precise moment, Vanessa stood motionless, her gaze icy. Her voice, firm but controlled, cut through the air. "You have exactly 2 seconds to step back and remember that your uniform does not make you superior." But Reynolds, self-assured, sneered and tried to publicly humiliate him, ready to arrest him for obstruction. No sooner had he gotten his walkie-talkie than everything changed. The FBI had been alerted in real time to the incident. A few minutes later, a special unit appeared on the street, surrounding Reynolds. His arrogance instantly turned to fear. Vanessa, calm and impassive, retrieved her badge and returned her seat to its normal position. Reynolds, pale and trembling, understood that what he had thought would be an easy humiliation was about to backfire on him. The lesson was clear: never underestimate a black woman who wears a badge and knows how to assert herself with dignity. The late afternoon sun bathed the streets of New Haven in an orange glow. Passers-by milled along the sidewalks, and the sound of horns echoed between the buildings. Behind the wheel of her black sedan, Vanessa Harper, an FBI agent in her 30s, was returning from a routine mission that had lasted more than 12 hours. Tired but focused, she was already thinking about getting back to her apartment and taking some time for herself. Suddenly, at the intersection of Maple Street, a patrol car pulled up beside her. The driver, Officer Mark Reynolds, a white police officer in his 40s, displayed that typical mix of arrogance and contempt that some people use to feel powerful. As soon as he laid eyes on Vanessa, a condescending smile stretched across his lips. "Hello, madam, did you know you were too close to the sidewalk?" he called out, his voice barely betraying his irritation. Vanessa slowly turned her head towards him, her dark eyes sparkling with quiet determination. "Good morning, officer. May I ask what exactly the problem is?" Reynolds frowned. He'd never had to question someone like her. With a sharp gesture, he pointed his hand toward his car. "I think you're over the limit. I'll have to check your papers." Vanessa took a deep breath and, with a precise gesture, took out her wallet and exposed her FBI badge. "I'm Agent Vanessa Harper, FBI. You'd better show some respect and not unnecessarily complicate your day." Reynolds's face tightened. His contempt turned to irritation. He couldn't conceive of a black woman correcting him, especially one holding a federal office. In a fit of smugness, he advanced on her, ready to humiliate and intimidate. But Vanessa didn't move. She remained motionless, her piercing gaze fixed on him. Her voice, calm but firm, echoed in the hot street air. "Back off, officer. Your badge doesn't give you the right to disrespect me." Reynolds, his ego stung, snorted. But at that precise moment, his walkie-talkie vibrated, and he felt an unusual tension in the air. Vanessa knew exactly what he'd just done, underestimating a black woman wearing a federal badge, a mistake he would soon regret. In the distance, a black car pulled up behind Reynolds's vehicle. FBI agents, alerted in real time to the situation, were now exiting their vehicles. The police officer, who thought he was exercising his authority, saw his world turn upside down. The humiliation he had intended to inflict was about to backfire on him. Vanessa, unperturbed, put her badge back in her wallet and turned the key in the ignition. The sirens were approaching. The lesson was clear: never underestimate someone who knows how to wield power with intelligence and dignity. Minutes after the red light incident, Officer Mark Reynolds was in shock. He had never imagined that his attempt at humiliation would backfire. The newly arrived FBI agents surrounded his car, their imposing presence making his ego tremble. Vanessa Harper, always calm, stepped elegantly out of her car. Her heels clicked on the asphalt as she approached Reynolds. Her piercing, dark eyes left no room for error. "Officer Reynolds," she said in an icy but perfectly controlled voice, "you have just crossed the line. Your behavior is unacceptable." Reynolds opened his mouth to protest, but one of the FBI agents cut him off. "Everything that just happened is on the record. We have your badge, your words, and your actions. Any complaints of obstruction or insubordination against Ms. Harper will be dismissed. Understood?" Reynolds's face paled. He knew he'd just lost all control. Vanessa, watching his reaction, realized this was the perfect moment to make him understand that you don't mess with a black female FBI agent without suffering the consequences. She gestured toward the passers-by who had witnessed the incident. Many of them had filmed the incident on their phones. Vanessa didn't just want to correct Reynolds, she wanted his arrogance exposed publicly, so that the lesson would be complete. "Officer Reynolds," she continued calmly, "I advise you to seriously consider your behavior and how you treat citizens. And more importantly, who you choose to disrespect." At that moment, passers-by began whispering among themselves, some showing their videos to the officers present. Reynolds felt humiliated, trapped in a spiral from which he could see no way out. Vanessa returned to her car, not without giving Reynolds one last defiant look. The FBI agents escorted her out, leaving the officer alone, trembling, while the street echoed with the murmurs of witnesses and the buzzing of phones. That day, Reynolds understood a truth he would never forget: power may be temporary, but dignity and authority are indestructible. The next morning, Officer Mark Reynolds was already in a disciplinary meeting at the police station. His immediate superior, Captain Daniel Brooks, an upright but strict man, stared at him with unusual gravity. Images and videos of the incident with Vanessa Harper had circulated very quickly, and the police hierarchy was far from taking the incident lightly. "Reynolds," Brooks began, his voice firm, "I want to understand exactly what happened yesterday." Reynolds, still in shock, stammered, unable to formulate a coherent justification. "It was her. I just wanted to control the situation." Brooks shook his head in disappointment. "You've crossed all lines. Threatening and attempting to humiliate a federal agent is a serious offense. Do you understand that this could jeopardize your entire career?" Meanwhile, Vanessa Harper, aware that the situation could change, had already taken the lead. She contacted her FBI superiors and prepared a comprehensive dossier, videos, bystander testimonies, and a report of the incident. She wanted to ensure that Reynolds paid for his arrogance, but without resorting to personal revenge. Her priority remained justice and the safety of all citizens. At 11 a.m., Reynolds received official notification: he was suspended with immediate effect, pending a full investigation. The news spread quickly within the station, and his colleagues now regarded him with suspicion, some with silent satisfaction. But that wasn't all. Vanessa, being the strategist she was, had taken care to send a summary of the incident to the New Haven district attorney, emphasizing that Reynolds's arrogance and discriminatory behavior had endangered the safety of a federal agent. The district attorney, alerted, decided to open a formal investigation into abuse of power and discriminatory conduct. Reynolds, now alone in his empty office, realized his reputation was ruined. His impulsive actions and disregard for legal procedures had put him in a position beyond his control. Vanessa, for her part, continued her day as if nothing had happened. Her badge, her dignity, and her determination had spoken for her. She knew that every action had to be calculated, every word weighed. The lesson had been taught: true authority lies not in force or fear, but in respect and competence. Days after his suspension, Officer Mark Reynolds was in turmoil. His pride had been hurt, his ego humiliated, and his reputation at the station was now tarnished. He knew he had to act to save what remained of his career. Cautiously, he tried to plan a strategy to redeem himself in the eyes of his superiors and the public. Reynolds asked to meet with Captain Daniel Brooks and the New Haven District Attorney, hoping to apologize and minimize the impact of his behavior. But even in the face of his mea culpa, he felt the authorities' coldness and distance. Brooks, firm, told him, "Reynolds, your apology doesn't change the facts. Your behavior endangered a federal agent. We will make sure this doesn't happen again." Vanessa Harper, for her part, was already planning her next steps. Aware that media coverage of the incident could be used as a tool to raise awareness of abuse of power and racial discrimination, she had contacted several reliable journalists. But she didn't want excessive personal exposure. Her mission remained justice and fairness, not glory. That same evening, Reynolds made a public appearance, making a clumsy attempt to atone for the incident with the local media. He called it an unfortunate incident and a misunderstanding. But every word he uttered seemed to reinforce his guilt, especially in light of the videos and testimonies already circulating on social media. The public, having witnessed the scene at the red light, could not ignore the truth. Reynolds had attempted to humiliate a black female federal agent in an arbitrary and racist manner. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued her daily work with the FBI, but she never lost sight of the impact of the incident. She knew that the real victory lay not only in punishing Reynolds, but in demonstrating that a black woman could command respect and authority in the face of arrogance and racism. This situation marked a turning point for Reynolds. He understood that acknowledging his wrongdoing would never be enough to repair the humiliation inflicted. And for Vanessa, it was proof that every confrontation with injustice could be transformed into a lesson in dignity and strength. Despite the suspension and warnings, Officer Mark Reynolds wasn't ready to accept defeat. The public humiliation he'd suffered was eating away at him, and his pride drove him to seek ways to regain his power and influence at the precinct. But this time, he had to be more subtle. He could no longer indulge in the impulsiveness that had led to the incident with Vanessa Harper. Reynolds began quietly building alliances among his colleagues, spreading rumors about Vanessa. He implied that she had exaggerated the situation, trying to sow doubt about her credibility. But his efforts quickly fell flat. Vanessa had anticipated these maneuvers. Her badge and status as a federal agent, combined with the meticulous documentation of the incident, rendered any attempt at discrediting her ineffective. For her part, Vanessa used the experience as an opportunity to strengthen her influence and protect her authority. She met with her FBI superiors and proposed training sessions on discrimination and abuse of power, using the Reynolds incident as a concrete example. She wanted to turn this confrontation into a lesson for other officers, to prevent similar situations from recurring. On the streets of New Haven, Vanessa's name was beginning to circulate. Residents and local media viewed her as a figure of strength and justice. Social media, fueled by videos of the incident, reflected growing admiration for her calm and poise in the face of an arrogant police officer. Reynolds, meanwhile, watched his plans crumble. Every attempt to regain a dominant position was met with Vanessa's growing influence. His wounded pride slowly turned to frustration and anger, as he realized that true authority is not claimed, it is earned. This confrontation, which had begun as a simple incident at a red light, was becoming a clash of powers. On one side, arrogance and resentment; on the other, competence, dignity, and strategy. And Vanessa knew that this fight wasn't just for her, but to show that respect and justice are never optional, regardless of rank or skin color. Despite his attempts to discredit her, Officer Mark Reynolds felt cornered. His bruised ego and frustration drove him to develop a more direct plan to regain control. He decided to confront Vanessa Harper in person, believing that a show of physical authority or intimidation might force her to back down. One foggy morning, Reynolds approached the federal parking lot where Vanessa parked her car. He stood beside her vehicle, his expression grim, and tried to adopt a threatening tone. "Agent Harper, I think it's time to settle our differences." Vanessa, farsighted, had already detected his presence. Undaunted, she got out of her car, her calm but determined footsteps echoing on the wet asphalt. "Reynolds," she said clearly, "any action you consider against me will be recorded and used against you. I advise you to turn back before things become irreversible." But Reynolds, blinded by his anger, didn't listen. He took a step toward her, hoping to intimidate her. At that moment, Vanessa discreetly activated her cell phone connected to her FBI team. In less than 30 seconds, several agents arrived as reinforcements, surrounding Reynolds. The police officer, taken aback, instinctively backed away. His plan to intimidate Vanessa had become a trap for himself. FBI agents recorded every word and every gesture. The situation that was supposed to serve Reynolds well backfired spectacularly. Vanessa, impassive, gestured toward Reynolds. "Every action has a consequence. You chose confrontation, and now you own the results." At that precise moment, Reynolds understood that all his efforts to regain power were only strengthening Vanessa's position. This was no longer just a matter of career or pride. He had been publicly humiliated, monitored by the FBI, and knew that any future attempts to act against her would be immediately punished. Vanessa walked calmly back to her car, her gaze fixed and determined. The FBI agents dispersed, leaving Reynolds alone in the middle of the parking lot, his face red with shame and incomprehension. For the first time, he understood that brute force and arrogance were insufficient in the face of competence, planning, and dignity. After the parking lot incident, Vanessa Harper realized that her victory over Reynolds was more than just a confrontation. She now had the opportunity to turn the experience into a symbol of strength, competence, and justice. Vanessa contacted trusted journalists to share the story, emphasizing the broader issue of abuse of power and discrimination in law enforcement. She wasn't seeking personal glory, but to raise awareness and send a clear message: respect and justice are imperative, and no one is above the rules. The published articles and videos demonstrated not only Reynolds' attempted intimidation, but also Vanessa's calm, collected, and dignified manner. The response was overwhelming. The community applauded her courage, social media shared the story with admiration, and even some of Reynolds' colleagues quietly expressed their support for Vanessa. Meanwhile, Reynolds' situation was worsening. Administrative pressure was mounting, investigations, official reports, and meetings with the disciplinary department were piling up. His attempt at a comeback had failed, and every action he took seemed to plunge him deeper into disgrace. Vanessa, aware of the impact on her reputation, continued to conduct her work with precision and rigor. She attended meetings with the FBI, participated in sensitive operations, and always remained impeccable in her conduct. Every action she took reinforced her image as a competent and honest professional. For Reynolds, this lesson was bitter. Any attempt to harm Vanessa paradoxically reinforced his authority and public stature. He finally realized that arrogance, racism, and impulsiveness were not enough to command respect. Vanessa knew it would be a long road to change attitudes, but this public and strategic victory over Reynolds was only the beginning. Every thoughtful action, every demonstration of dignity, contributed to a greater goal: to show that justice and integrity always triumph, even against the most arrogant. As his reputation crumbled and administrative pressure intensified, Officer Mark Reynolds began to panic. The thought of permanently losing his career haunted him. Desperate, he decided to take one last stab, a risky move to publicly discredit Vanessa Harper and reclaim some of his power. Reynolds devised a plan to trap Vanessa at an urban safety conference, where she was scheduled to speak to police and media representatives. He hoped to trip her up or cause an incident that would divert attention from him to her. But what he didn't know was that Vanessa had anticipated every possibility. The day of the conference, the room was packed. Vanessa, calm and confident, took the stage. Her speech on justice, dignity, and the fight against abuse of power immediately captivated the audience. Every word, every gesture, demonstrated her mastery and credibility. Reynolds discreetly attempted to carry out his plan, but before he could act, Vanessa noticed his suspicious movements. With incredible presence of mind, she turned the situation to her advantage. she publicly challenged Reynolds, exposing him in front of everyone present. "Officer Reynolds," she said, staring him straight in the eye, "I believe you attempted to disrupt this conference. Such conduct is not only unacceptable, but it now places you under investigation for inappropriate behavior and attempted sabotage." The room erupted in murmurs and shocked looks. Reynolds, trapped, immediately realized that his latest attempt at rehabilitation had backfired spectacularly. His attempt to harm Vanessa had further strengthened his position and reputation. Vanessa, always calm, concluded her speech elegantly, "True authority is not claimed, it is demonstrated. And dignity and integrity are the only weapons that never betray." For Reynolds, the day was irrefutable proof that manipulation and arrogance never triumph over skill, strategy, and dignity. For Vanessa, it was another victory, a resounding demonstration that justice can always prevail, even against those who believe they hold power through fear and intimidation. A few weeks after the conference, Officer Mark Reynolds faced his final punishment. The internal investigation had gathered all the witness statements, videos, and evidence accumulated since the initial incident. The police hierarchy, supported by the FBI and the New Haven District Attorney, no longer had any room to excuse his actions. Reynolds was summoned to the Chief of Police's office, flanked by his superiors and an FBI representative. Every move he had made to salvage his reputation had been documented, and the case was damning. The chief spoke with cold authority. "Officer Reynolds, your actions constitute an abuse of power, discrimination, and an attempt to intimidate a federal officer. We have no choice but to permanently remove you from your duties." Reynolds, stunned, felt his world crumble. His arrogance, impulsiveness, and hubris had led to a complete and irreversible public humiliation. He finally realized that brute force and arrogance were no match for the skill, strategy, and dignity of others. Meanwhile, Vanessa Harper continued her work with the FBI, but news of Reynolds's final punishment spread quickly through the city and the media. New Haven residents saw her as a figure of justice and exemplary behavior. Her calm, poise, and strategy had transformed a dangerous confrontation into a resounding victory, not only personal but also symbolic for all those who suffer injustice. Vanessa, aware of the importance of the public impact, chose to remain humble in her statements. She thanked the FBI team and emphasized that this case simply reminded us that respect, dignity, and integrity must guide all actions, regardless of rank or power. For Reynolds, this public and professional defeat was a cruel reminder that impulsive and discriminatory acts can never survive in the face of truth and justice. For Vanessa, it was confirmation that courage and strategy always triumph, even in the face of the most stubborn arrogance. A few weeks after Officer Mark Reynolds's final fall, Vanessa Harper's life resumed its normal course, but with a new dimension. She was no longer just an accomplished FBI agent, she had become a symbol of strength, dignity, and justice, both for her colleagues and for the New Haven community. Vanessa spoke at conferences, gave interviews, and was invited to panel discussions on the fight against abuse of power and discrimination in law enforcement. Each time, she shared her experience with humility and wisdom, transforming a difficult personal episode into a universal lesson. Reynolds, meanwhile, sank into professional oblivion. His attempts at rehabilitation failed, and his career was permanently damaged. Every time his name was mentioned in the precinct, he was now associated with arrogance, humiliation, and public demise. The lesson he had learned from Vanessa now echoed throughout the halls: true authority is earned through respect, competence, and integrity, not fear and intimidation. On the streets of New Haven, residents shared Vanessa's story with admiration. She had become a living example that dignity and courage always triumph in the face of injustice. Her ability to remain calm, strategic, and unmoved in the face of arrogance had inspired many to stand up for their rights and never be intimidated. One evening, as she left the FBI after a long day, Vanessa looked out at the city stretching out before her. She remembered that red light where it all began, that arrogant police officer who thought he could put her down. And she smiled inwardly, knowing that every step of this fight had been a victory, not only for her, but for all those who believe in justice and human dignity. The story ended with a simple but powerful truth: true strength lies not in the fear one inspires, but in the respect one earns.